it really does feel like the investigation is just getting started. You made a great point that Mueller, much of what Manafort's arrest, and I would say Rick Gates as well, what their arrest and their 12 count indictment show is that Mueller is going to throw the book at people for criminal activity, and it doesn't need the words Russia involved in it. And so this puts Donald Trump on notice that, whether or not he was in any way involved in any type of Russian collusion, if he thought that he could escape any type of accountability because maybe low-level people were involved in it and he didn't have any involvement or none of it ever happened, he is going to be held to account for law breaking. At least that's what Manafort is signaling. What he also signaled that day was that I also have an element of this investigation that is directly a function of communications, attempted communications with Russia or Russian agents in an attempt to solicit their help and collude with them on the campaign of Donald Trump. So he sort of hit both ends of the spectrum of what the investigation could do. He signaled both to those people in the administration who might have other skeletons in their closet that have nothing to do with Russia. And he also signaled to the Senate and the American public, like, hey, at the very least, there's some very, very hot smoke around this thing. And so this investigation is not just a fishing expedition. It is we're tracking something as well. So he managed to do both in one day, sending two different messages that make it much harder to fire, frankly, Robert Mueller.
Oh, I don't think there's any doubt. And I think, I think that up to that point, there had been this kind of building, aside from the absolutely absurd Fox News counter-narrative that they're building, that Hillary Clinton was the one who colluded with the Russians, I guess, to elect Donald Trump. I mean, none of this makes any sense. But there's that going on. But there was also this building pressure, I think, within, you heard it from people like Lindsey Graham and others who were kind of starting to say, hey, Mueller needs to wrap this thing up. They're not showing anything. They're not getting anything done. And boom. I think Mueller put that to rest for the reasons that you suggest. That those two tentacles of the investigation were clearly, this had been very well laid out. They decided to go ahead. Let's just pull the trigger on these two, and also, show. And this was true from the beginning, Sam. You put a prosecutor on a case, and it doesn't have to be a special counsel's office. Any prosecutor, state or federal or whomever. When they come across evidence of a crime in the investigation, they go after it. There's nothing that says, hey, you're only allowed to pursue one crime at a time. I mean, that's just not how it works. And in fact, all the Republicans should remember the Whitewater case back in the 90s started off about a land deal back in the 80s and wound up with a consensual sexual affair in the White House. I mean, they couldn't have been more unrelated.
Far afield, right.
Exactly, but that's how these things go. And in the course of that investigation, they should also remember, back in Arkansas, a whole bunch of people went to jail. A woman named Susan McDougal went to jail for months and months and months because she refused to cooperate with the special prosecutor, Ken Starr. I mean, they took down one of the governors of Arkansas in that case. So these things, if a prosecutor is on you, it doesn't matter where that comes from, whether it's a special prosecutor or not. They are going to go where the evidence takes them. That's just the way that it is. Now, in this case, of course, there are political ramifications for all of that, and Mueller has signaled that he doesn't care. And basically, he went after Manafort for the FAR Act, which is the Foreign Agent something, whatever.
Right.
It's very rarely prosecuted, but he used that against Manafort, and he's also been talking to, the Democrats. I mean, Tony Podesta, the brother of Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, was also involved in this, failing to register as a foreign agent, which was one of the charges. He resigned from his firm this past week. Mueller is saying, I'm going there. You know, whatever I'm finding in the course of this, you people better watch out. And it also says, he also said very clearly, do not lie. If you lie, we're going to use that. We're not going to just say, oh, okay, you know, this is it is a crime, and we're going to use it, and you better be careful of what you're saying. Now, you know, I mean, I'm a big civil libertarian. This is not the kind of thing, you know, I'm not just sitting here going, oh, good, you know, the G-man is in there doing a great job, you know, whatever. But this is a very, very serious situation for us. This Russian interference goes way beyond, you know, trying to set up a meeting between Donald Trump and Putin that didn't actually happen. The interference in the election was extreme, as we are seeing with what's unfolding with Facebook and Google and all this other stuff. There were actual, you know, there were fake Facebook accounts that set up, meetings or rather rallies in New York City of 10,000 people showed up for these things. I mean, this is very, very serious business, and the fact, you know, Mueller has simply got, I think, just for the sake of democracy, because particularly considering that the Republicans in Congress are refusing to do their job and are basically dragging their feet, barely able to raise their heads in you know, kind of sleepy concern that maybe something happened. This is all we've got, and we have no reason to believe that unless he follows these trails wherever they lead and puts the squeeze on these people who were involved in this thing, you know, we may never be able to recover. So in this one case, I'm kind of saying, you know, go Mr. G-man. I mean, this is a very serious issue.
There's other implications to this too, and we're going to take a break. When we come back, let's talk about John Kelly and the way he's reacting this week, because I don't think it's a coincidence. We see this pattern over and over again. It is the white supremacy and sort of this neo-Confederacy is the Trump administration's last refuge, it seems. And I also want to talk about why it was we were seeing such a push to end the Mueller investigation from folks like Lindsey Graham across the board. And I suspect it has to do with the other sort of ongoing issue, and that is the Republicans' tax and budget plan, which was delayed in terms of release this week because I think they're having a lot of troubles with it, and I'm not convinced this investigation doesn't implicate those troubles. We'll take a quick break. We'll talk more. I'm talking to the great Heather Parton, or you may know her as Digby. You know me as Sam Seder, and this is Ring of Fire Radio.